He got the promotion he had wanted for 11 years. The corner office, the new title on his email signature, the number he used to whisper to himself in the car before interviews, finally attached to his name. He felt it for about 4 hours. By the next morning, he was looking sideways at a man 2 floors up with a slightly larger office and a title 1 word longer than his own. This isn't a story about a promotion. It's about a hunger philosophy warned us about for over 2,000 years and modern culture keeps mistaking for drive. Ambition feels like it comes from inside you. It doesn't, not entirely. Long before you wanted the corner office, someone else wanted it first and showed you it was worth wanting. Long before you wanted the number in your bank account, you watched someone else reach it and felt the specific ache of not having what they had. The philosopher and literary theorist René Girard spent much of his career on a single unfashionable claim. Most of what we want, we learn to want by watching somebody else want it first. He called it mimetic desire. Desire that imitates another person's desire, rather than originating from some pure private core of the self. This sounds abstract until you apply it to your own ambition. Ask yourself honestly, the goal you are currently chasing, did you choose it or did you inherit it from a model? A parent's approval, a rival's success, an industry's definition of a rival, a number someone else hit that quietly became the number you now measure yourself against. Most ambition is not a compass pointed at something you actually want. It is a compass pointed at another compass. And a compass pointed at another compass will move every time the other one moves, which means it never actually arrives anywhere. It just relocates the finish line to wherever the model happens to be standing. Here is the specific danger this creates. When ambition is borrowed rather than chosen, achievement doesn't satisfy it. Achievement transfers it. You hit the target, and for a few hours, maybe a day, the wanting goes quiet. Then your attention, out of habit, looks for the next model, the next person 1 rung up, the next number slightly larger than the one you just reached. This explains something that puzzles almost every man who has actually gotten somewhere: why the win feels smaller than the wanting did. The wanting was never really about the specific target. It was about closing a gap between yourself and a model. And the moment you close one gap, the mechanism simply finds a new one, because the mechanism was never built to stop. It was built to compare. Modern career culture is almost a perfect machine for keeping this mechanism running. Every platform shows you somebody 1 rung higher. Every title has a slightly better version of itself. Every number has a slightly larger version sitting 1 tax bracket away. The latter is designed, not accidentally, but by the incentives of the system selling you the next rung to never visibly end. A man climbing a ladder with no top does not experience this as failure. He experiences it as ambition. He experiences it as drive. He tells himself, correctly, that he is disciplined, motivated, hungry. What he doesn't ask is the only question that would actually help him. Hungry for what specifically, and according to whose original hunger? This is where philosophy stops being decorative and becomes structural. Aristotle used a word the Stoics later inherited and modern self-help mostly discarded: telos. It means end in the sense of purpose, not a task's conclusion, but the thing a thing is actually for. A knife's telos is cutting, an eye's telos is seeing. Aristotle's claim, radical enough to organize an entire ethics around, was that a human life also has a telos, a specific definable shape of flourishing, which he called eudaimonia. Not pleasure, not accumulation, a specific kind of functioning well according to reason and virtue. Here is the part almost nobody applies correctly. Without a working answer to what your life's telos actually is, ambition has no criteria for enough. It has no internal stopping point. It can only ever measure itself against other people's ambition, because it has nothing else to measure itself against. Philosophy's actual function in this context is not motivational, it is definitional. It answers the only question ambition cannot answer for itself. What specifically are you building towards, and how would you know if you had already arrived? A man without this answer is not lacking discipline. He has plenty of discipline. The promotion proves that. He is lacking a destination independent of other people's positions. And a man with no destination of his own will spend his entire finite life running towards a target that relocates itself every single time he reaches it, because the target was never his to begin with. History gives us an almost unbearably literal version of this. Alexander of Macedon, by the time he reached his early 30s, had conquered more territory than any man in recorded history before him. He had done, by any external measure, everything ambition could ask of a man. And the story that has survived him, whether wholly true or partly legend, it captures something exact, is that he wept somewhere near the edge of the known world because there were no more worlds left to conquer. Notice the mechanism precisely. It was never about a specific territory. If it had been, arriving at that territory would have ended it. The wanting had no object of its own, only the comparison, only the next thing beyond the current edge. And so a man who had achieved literally everything available to achieve experienced not fulfillment, but a bottomless, specific grief, because the mechanism generating his ambition had no internal terminus. It could only stop if the world itself ran out, and eventually it did. This is the extreme case, but the mechanism is not extreme. It is the same mechanism operating in the man 2 floors up with the slightly longer title. Ambition without a self-authored telos does not know how to stop, because stopping was never one of its available settings. It only knows how to relocate. So what does it actually look like to fix this? Not in theory, but on a Tuesday. It starts with a specific, uncomfortable act of honesty, naming in plain language whose finish line you are actually running toward, not in the abstract, specifically. Whose member is it? Whose title? Whose approval still operating in you from 20 years ago, quietly setting the terms of what counts as enough? Once that model is named, it can be examined instead of obeyed. You can ask directly whether that particular life, the one you have been unconsciously copying, would actually constitute your idea of a life well spent, examined on its own terms, or whether you inherited the wanting without ever inheriting the reasoning behind it. This is uncomfortable work because most men have never actually defined eudaimonia for themselves in concrete terms, not because they're shallow, because nobody ever asked them to, and the ladder was right there, already lit up, already moving, and stepping onto it required no definition at all. Philosophy's use here is not comfort, it's specificity. A defined telos gives ambition an actual stopping condition, a way to know, in principle, what having enough would even look like. Without that definition, more is not a strategy. It is simply the only direction available to a compass that was never pointed anywhere in particular. So go back to the man in the corner office. The specific danger was never the promotion. It was what happened 4 hours after it, the automatic, unexamined redirection of his attention toward the next rung, the next model, the next number slightly larger than his own, without ever once asking whether that number belonged to a life he had actually chosen. He still doesn't have an answer to what his eudaimonia looks like. Almost no one does on the first try, and philosophy was never going to hand it to him fully formed. But he can, for the first time, name the specific model he has been chasing, the man 2 floors up, and ask honestly whether that particular life, examined completely, is the one he actually wants, or only the one he has been trained to want. This will not stop his ambition. It was never supposed to. What it changes is the direction the ambition points, from a compass slaved to somebody else's position to a compass pointed, however imperfectly, at something he has actually chosen and can actually define. That is the only difference philosophy was ever going to make. Not less hunger, a hunger that finally knows what it's for.